How long does it take to sail a boat down to the Bahamas? And how much did it cost me? I'm going to get into that in this video, so hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Let's get into the details about my experience sailing my boat from Toronto, Canada, all the way down to the Bahamas. My name is Michael Potts, and I live on this Scepter 36-foot sailboat. This is where I am today. And in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how long it took me to sail all the way from Toronto down to the Bahamas. Okay, and if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to give you an idea of what it's going to cost you if you do the same thing. All right, so in 2020, I purchased this boat here. It's a Scepter 36 in 1979, and had some work done to her. I managed to work for a year, so I had enough to take some time off, and I decided to sail down to the Bahamas. And you can watch all those videos. They're on my channel there. So it's a really common question that a lot of people ask me. It's a strange thing about people are like, how long did it take you to do that? You know, and I'm sure there's all sorts of keyboard captains out there that will disagree with me here, but I'm going to give you my take, my opinion, and I'm going to tell you exactly how long it took me. So let's start with I'm going to start with how I did it, and how long it took me, and how much it costed. And then we'll go into, now that I know how to do it, how quickly I could do it, right? And then we'll go into some basic things that I've learned in terms of what types of boats are best for this and what gear you really need. And then at the end, I'm gonna tell you what it cost me to do and what I could do it if I did it again. All right, so let's get into it. So in 2020, I left late in the season. You don't wanna go down to the Bahamas in the hurricane season. You don't want to go anywhere near Florida in the hurricane season, okay? The reason is because at any moment a large storm can brew and you could get caught in it. And if that's the case, your insurance company will call it a named storm, and if something happens to the boat, you will be uninsured and you will lose your boat and you will have nothing. Now, if you're down in the Bahamas during the hurricane season, you'll note that there's boats everywhere. And some people have deals with their insurance company where they, in their insurance, it says that if a named storm does approach, they will have the funds to go on to the hard and would be, it'll be strapped down to a cement pad. And that's called a navigational extension. That's something you can look into with your insurance company. My insurance company was the same. Now, before I go into this, now that I'm onto the topic of insurance, it's very important. Because I had some experience sailing before, my insurance company actually insured my vessel and gave me my navigational extension. That covered from essentially New York all the way down to Turks and Caicos. So that was as far as I could go. That's all they would do for insurance. Okay, that's the navigational extension they gave me. And it was roughly about $1,200 a year, okay? So I worked on my boat, got it right, had a survey done. In order to get the navigational extension, the insurance company wanted a new survey. So I had that survey done and it passed, okay? And I was able to get my navigational extension. So the day I left the dock, it was the strangest thing, you know? A lot of people, like for years, when I was going to work, when I was at work, when my time off, I was looking at charts and, studying and thinking about this passage, this adventure, this life adventure to the Bahamas. And it became a sort of obsession. And the day that I left, it was really scary. It was a strange thing. I was like, it's really hard to commit to that, because when you're sailing in that direction that you're going to be going in that direction for months, okay? And so I left Lake Ontario and got to Oswego. I sailed, this was later on in the season, because obviously you don't want to be anywhere near Florida in the summer. It's really hot, there's hurricanes. So it's going into the winter. So I crossed Lake Ontario, got into Oswego, where I took my mast down. And the mast was horizontal on the boat. That cost me like 180 bucks or something, American. And then I headed down the Oswego into the Erie Canal, where there was like 40 locks, and made it down to the Hudson River Lock and Dam, which is on the Hudson River, okay, salt water. brackish saltwater. And there I made it down and into New York, and anchored behind the Statue of Liberty, went around Sandy Hook, and went down to the Atlantic City area, where I actually put the boat into a marina for a month, and I flew back to Canada, okay, and came back. So it essentially took me a month to get down just past New York City, just south of New York City, okay, and then I was away for a month, okay. So I probably could have done it a lot quicker, but I wanted to enjoy my experience. There were times where I was like, I really like it here. I'm going to stop and I'm going to have a look around. I'm going to explore. I'm going to go for a walk into, away from the boat, and really enjoy and absorb the ambience of whatever area I was in. And I really loved it. That was part of my motivation for going down there, was to enjoy my time. And if you stick around a little bit further, I'll tell you how quickly you could do it. If you really had to get right down to, let's say, Nassau, I'll tell you exactly the quickest way I could do it and how long it would take. And if you stick around in the end, I'll tell you how much it's going to cost you. So I'm in New York. I'm now 2 months in, and I remember it was like November, and I'm just south of Atlantic City. I can't remember the name of the port right now. And I remember the night that I decided to leave. I had weather. It was downwind conditions. There was ice on the deck, and it was cold, and I was like, oh geez, man. So anyway, I started making my way down the coast towards Hatteras. Now, what is Hatteras? Hatteras is a knob of land that sticks out into the Gulf Stream. It's about 30 nautical miles from the Gulf Stream. What is the Gulf Stream? See, these are the things you gotta know, this sort of thing, and that's what this channel is about. I'm gonna try and teach you guys pass on as much of my experience as I can into these videos. And I've been racing. I've been joining yacht club races recently, and that'll be in next week's video, so stick around for that. It's gonna be great. We raced 11 sailboats. We came in 4th, and it's every Wednesday night. So I was gonna make that video for today, but it's not right yet. I want to get it perfect so that you guys really like the video. So anyway, so I'm heading south in New York, okay? I'm now at like 5 weeks in, essentially. And so think about that, right? I'm already a month and a week in, and I'm just past New York. It's really not that far away. You could fly to New York from here in maybe an hour or 2. So, all right, so most of your time on a sailboat is going to be going in and out of ports, okay? If you had the right boat with the right crew, you could leave New York and go right to the Caribbean. In fact, I know captains that have left the Bahamas and sailed all the way to New York and said they set the sails once, right? It is possible to do that sort of thing. The problem with heading south is the Gulf Stream, okay? The Gulf Stream is a current of water, like a serpent, that heads at 2.5 knots north from south, and it goes north and winds its way up the coast. Okay, so this is this formidable piece of water, stretch of water that you have to contend with, and it meets land at Hatteras, so it creates its own weather system. So Hatteras is the graveyard of the Atlantic, and that's one of the big obstacles of when you're sailing from Toronto down to the Bahamas. Okay, so we're 5 weeks in, and we're making our way down the coast, okay? And I decided to take my time and really see the eastern seaboard of the US, and learn how to sail on the way. So I took the inside of Hatteras. So I managed to make it to Beaufort by New Year's Eve, where I had quite an interesting story that I'm going to tell you right now. Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm now, let's say, so I left in November. So it took me a month to get to Hatteras, to the other side of Hatteras, on the inside. You can take the outside and it would be really quick, but there's nowhere to go in, and it's notoriously tricky because weather can just blow up at anywhere. If you get caught out at sea on the point of Hatteras there, you could be in big trouble. A lot of ships have sunk over the years. There's thousands of wrecks there, and it's not something I recommend. You see, I've been doing what's called chicken shit sailing. I will only sail in under 18 knots of wind and only in pretty much perfect conditions. Why? Because this is an older boat. She's a 79, and I didn't want to stress out the rig. Very important. And I didn't want to ruin my insurance. Eventually I plan on sailing around the world. I want to maintain my insurance credibility. Okay, I don't want to have to make an insurance claim. So I was doing no risk sailing until the end here, and we're gonna get into that story. So I'm in Beaufort. It's New Year's Eve, and I pull up to this place called Sugar Island. All right, and there's a boat there that's anchored, a similar sailboat, and no one's on it. And I think the owner had put it there thinking, oh, it'll be fine, don't worry about it. So anyway, I'm anchored and we're swinging around, and I know there's weather coming in, and I'm like, oh God, this is brutal. I didn't want to pay for a marina at the time. I was going to spend Christmas and New Year's just on the hook, you know, talking to family on my phone and enjoy myself. Maybe cook some food, sit down below, edit some videos, enjoy my life, play my guitar, write some music, that sort of thing. So anyway, the weather blew up, and I knew it was going to happen, and it was crazy. And I was like, I'm not doing this. The waves, you know, my chain was vertical. I have full chain on my boat, and I could see the chain was out of the water and it was going like this, and I was like, oh, this isn't good, you know. And I could have drug into the island there. So I decided to pull up the hook, and I had trouble doing that because the wind was on my nose, and you're not supposed to use your windlass to pull your boat, right? You're supposed to use the power of your engine, but as a single hander, you don't really, with this boat anyway. It's a really hard thing to do. You got to put it in throttle, you got to run up there, push the button for the windlass to wind it in, and it tends to get tangled and stuff. So in this case, I had to use the windlass, which wasn't good, to pull the boat, and it, you know, it heated up. It was bad. Anyway, I got the hook up and just made it off the beach and around the point and into a marina where I stayed for a few days over Christmas and New Year's. It was like 5 days or something there. And you know, I drove around the city and enjoyed myself. And it was funny because I remember I was like, okay, it's time to head south. You know, finally I'm around Hatteras. I can start heading down towards Florida. And when I pulled around, I anchored at Sugar Island that night before I left in the morning down the ICW into North Carolina. And there was that boat that had no one on it on the beach. Crazy. So had I have stayed there, I could have ended up on the beach. That's the thing about sailing. You know, it can all be over in a moment. And then what do? You'll have to do an insurance claim. Had I have gone up on the beach there, it may have damaged the boat. I would have had to phone my insurance company. They would have had to, you know, I would have had to pay for the fixing of it. It would have blown through my budget, right? So you got to be careful. This is the key. When I left Toronto, I was a novice sailor. I barely didn't know how to sail. I was learning as I was going. And so we're now, I left in October. It's now past New Year's, so I'm 2 months in, and I'm past Hatteras. And if you look on the map, Hatteras is a big knob, sticks out where the Gulf Stream is. So eventually, it took me another 6 weeks to get down to Miami, and I enjoyed myself, okay? I went down and explored Charleston and stayed there for a few weeks, and, you know, was in certain ports and areas and had to look around. And again, I was only sailing in perfect conditions. So the great thing about sailing like that is you're going to have a huge list of things that need to be done to the boat. Things are going to break. You need to do maintenance to the engine, oil changes. You need to change anodes. You need to scrape the bottom down. There's always something to do on a sailboat. So the way I worked it was when it was bad weather, okay, I would find somewhere really protected, and I would drop the hook, and I would go down below and edit videos and do maintenance and go through the list. And then when the weather was perfect, you know, and it was the right wind conditions, I would try to save money on fuel, and I would sail. So that's why it was taking so long. That's why it took me, essentially, I made it to Miami in 3 months, just under 3 months, and I spent quite a while there. The reason I spent a long time in Miami was because I knew that I had to leave the US and go into the Bahamas, and I'd never been there before. Right? I didn't know what to expect. I'd looked at cruising guides and magazines and talked to other people about stuff, but I'd never done it myself. Now, I ended up crossing into the Bahamas 4 times. So I crossed the Gulf Stream 8 times in my career. And, you know, recently I sailed from Bermuda all the way into Antigua. And we'll talk about that in a second here. The quick route to the Bahamas. We're going to talk about that in a second here, and then how much it cost me. So stick around. So I'm in Miami, and I waited 3 whole weeks on weather. I remember I provisioned up, and the boat was perfect. It was full of fuel. Scuba tanks were full, loaded with beer, loaded with food and frozen stuff and everything that I needed. Okay. And then I hit like the 2.5 week mark, and I'd burned through some of my provisions, and there was a weather window, and I didn't take it because I went and reprovisioned. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know you can actually get a lot of food in the Bahamas. Okay, maybe a little bit expensive, but you can find it if you go to the right places. And these are lessons that you learn. You know, that's what this channel is about. You know, I plan on making more of these videos to pass on the knowledge that I learned doing these passages, because I intend to sail around the world. We're going to talk about that at the end of the video as well. So I'm in Miami, and I remember the window never came, and I got frustrated, and I was 2.5 weeks in, and I just decided to leave in a small craft warning and go against all the advice that everyone gave to me. That serpent of water that goes north between the Bahamas and the mainland of Florida, that Gulf Stream of water, goes north really quickly. So when you leave Miami, you kind of drift north, right? And you can actually drift off and into oblivion if you don't pay attention. So it was a mental barrier for me. Anyway, I left in that morning. I was making videos, so I left. I remember I was leaving Miami and the sun was there. You should always leave Miami in the dark. And the wind shifted on from the north, and you should never ever cross the Gulf Stream in a northerly, okay? Because that water is going this way, the wind is going this way, and it creates these treacherous waves. You get crazy fetch, and it's not recommended. 0 wind from the north. Never cross, okay? Unless, of course, you're on a big ship or something, but as a single-hander on a boat that's under 40 feet, don't do it. So I did it anyway, and that's the video called My Biggest Sailing Mistake Yet. I got to the entrance of Bimini. There was a tiny bit of sunlight, and as I was going into the entrance, it got dark. I phoned Bimini at the Rod and Gun Club and said, how do I get through this entrance? You never go into a port at night. Don't ever do that. Unless it's a container ship port, or you know the port, right? Never go into an unknown port at night. Just don't do it. Okay, do everything in your power not to do that. And in this case, I got caught. And I phoned the Rod and Gun Club, and the lady was like, yeah, just follow the flashing green buoy. Big mistake. She didn't know that flashing green buoy had been blown onto a beach by a hurricane in the previous season. So I basically followed that flashing green buoy and went right up on the beach. And it was crazy. I remember the moon was full and the clouds were going like this, and I could feel the keel hitting off the bottom. I was right here, and it was like boom, you know, I could feel it hitting off the sand, and I was like, oh no, this isn't good, you know. And I was thinking, what do I do, you know, like, how do I get out of this situation? And my heart sank, you know, and I was like, this isn't good, you know, you're probably gonna lose the boat, you know. I was thinking about jumping off the back and swimming ashore. I probably would have died. And by the grace of God, a warm feeling came over me. I was, you know, I will survive, you know. What do I got to do to get out of this situation? I put the throttle in full, I put the Genoa up, and started wiggling off the beach, and made it worse. And then some sort of weird rogue wave caught me and knocked my boat, and I managed to wiggle free and into the inner part of the atoll of Bimini. And remember, because all the lines were tangled and I couldn't get the sails down, I had to cut one of the lines. And I remember when I was out there, I called Mayday, and nobody answered. Nobody. Mayday, Mayday, you know, and nobody answered. And I really felt alone in the wilderness of the Bahamas there, and it was crazy. So by the grace of God, I made it into the inner part of Bimini. It was nuts. So these are the lessons that you have to learn. If you're gonna sail from Toronto down to the Bahamas, it's probably gonna take you between 3 and 4 months. You could probably do it in 6 weeks with a crew and the right boat. I have a it's 27 horsepower diesel engine. You know, I can average 4 knots. So those extra 2 knots is huge. You can cover way more distance. Okay, the way it works out, if you can actually motor quickly in certain situations, you're going to be on the ICW where you can't have your sails up. A lot of the ICW you can sail, a good portion of it. In fact, there's parts in South Carolina where it's like a racetrack. You know, you're like, sails are up, you're bombing around corners. I was having the time of my life. And then there's times when the weather's perfect, it's downwind conditions, and you can take the outside, okay? So you could do it quickly. So if I was to say to you, if someone came to me, which has been a very common question, Michael, how long did it take you to sail to the Bahamas? It took me 3 months to get to Miami, okay? But I took my time, okay? It actually took 4, but I was away for a month. I took my time, and is that right? Yeah, it's something like that. So so hold on a second. November. Yeah, it took about 3 months. So once you get into the Bahamas is relatively small. So you can get down and into Nassau and down and into the Exumas in no time. Okay, so if you're already in America, right now you're watching this video and you live in, let's say Beaufort, and you want to sail down to the Bahamas, cut that time in half. You see what I mean? And a lot of the time too was spent dismasting this vessel, going through the canals, and then putting the mast back up. That's going to take some time. So on average for me, it took me 3 months, and I was in the Bahamas. Okay, so that's probably around where it's going to take you. Now let's talk about how long, how quickly. Now that I know how to do it, okay, now that I'm an experienced captain, I've sailed from as crew from Bermuda to Antigua, and that took us 7 days. So we covered 1,000 nautical miles in 7 days. That was on a 53 foot Beneteau, 15.1 meter Beneteau, and 7 days. So from you could go from Lunenburg, which is just beside Halifax in Canada, to Bermuda in about 6 days. You can go from New York to Bermuda in about 6 days. So you're looking at 2 weeks. So if you left New York City, you could be in the Caribbean in 2 weeks, for sure. It can be done. And you know, if you have the right boat and the right crew, and you use the Chris Parker Weather Service, which is a service where you hire a captain to look at the weather and plan give you advice on your journey, your passage. Highly recommend doing that. And a really good buddy of mine, Lenny, he's on his way to Lunenburg right now, and he's planning on sailing around the world, Captain Jack, and hope he's doing well. He's just got a bunch of new equipment, new dinghies, and he got a brand new engine on his boat. So he's about to go and do what I did, or I'd probably go further. So at the end of the day, if you're gonna leave from Canada, from Toronto in particular, it's probably gonna take you 3 months to get down to Miami, and that's enjoying the sights. You could do it really quickly in about 3 weeks. Okay, you could cross Lake Ontario, get to New York in about a week. Okay, if you're really pushing it and had a crew and had everything booked, you know, where you're going in and you're not waiting for boats to get your mast down, it is possible to be in the Caribbean in 3 weeks. It is possible. I'd say about a month is more realistic. So you're gonna leave Toronto, you're gonna be in the Caribbean in a month. You're gonna be down there for at least 3 months, and then it's gonna take you a month to get back. So it could be a 6 month journey in total. How much is that gonna cost you? All right, it cost me $27,000, okay, over that entire time that I was down there. I was down there for 2 seasons though. This is like, you know, I came home for 6 months, I came home for a month, you know, and I explored Florida, and I really enjoyed the place. I was in Charleston for a while, you know, and I was sailing and meeting people. You go into a marina and suddenly you're talking to everyone. You want to stay for a few days and enjoy other people's company and meet people and enjoy your time, right? So you're going to spend a bit of money there. Now that I know how to do it, I could cut that budget in half. Most of your time is going into ports. If you can figure out a way to stay out on the ocean, heading south as much as you can, then it's a lot easier, okay? And a lot quicker. Not a lot easier, but a lot quicker. This boat has AIS, automatic identification system. So as a single-hander, I do have a computer that will beep if I'm gonna collide with a ship, but you can never really sleep. I never did in my time. The most amount of sleep that I ever got out on the ocean was maybe 40 minutes, maybe a little longer than that, because I was like out for 2 days. And you drift in and out of sleep, and you set an alarm, you wake up, you look around. You're not going to get any good sleep as a single-hander out on the ocean. Forget it. It's not going to happen. So it's really important that you have a partner with you, okay? Someone, your wife or your girlfriend, whoever, where you can do shift work, where you can hand over the boat and go and get good sleep. That will make a huge difference, okay? As a single-hander, it's tough. And so that's why I was doing the 50 nautical miles per day, and more like 35 to 40 nautical miles per day at the end of the day. When you wake up, you motor. And again, I was doing chicken shit sailing, only sailing in perfect conditions. So I hope that gives you an idea so between 15 and 30 grand is what it's going to cost you, and that will get you down there for a year, okay? And that's really you know, sporadically spending money on shore. So you could do it for a lot less. I'm sure you could. Make a comment down below. Tell me what you think. Now let's talk a bit about boats. All right. If you're watching this video and you're like, oh, this is great, I want to know what he has to say. You know, I plan on doing this. This is my life's work. You know, I want to go down and I want to go sailing. I want to do what he did. One piece of advice that I can give you is this: choose your vessel. It's so important you choose the right vessel, okay? Listen to me when I tell you this. If you choose to buy a 27-foot sailboat, okay, it's going to be really uncomfortable. You're not going to have a lot of space. You won't be able to store a lot of things. And a big vessel, you know, it cuts through the waves differently. The difference between a 27 and a 36 is huge. In fact, above 30 feet, every foot you add on in length doubles the displacement of the vessel. So it's so much bigger. The difference between a 27 and a 36 is night and day. The difference between a 36 and a 50 is exponential. You get a huge vessel and this massive sail area where you can do huge sailing passages, you know, where you can do 60 nautical miles a day, no problem. A vessel like this, under sail power, off the coast of Florida, maybe 50, 40, in the right wind conditions, sometimes motoring. So choose your vessel. It's very important that you choose the right vessel. Now, fin keels, in my opinion, I would never buy a fin keel ever again, okay? They're bolted on. If you undo the bolts on these production fin keel boats like mine, I have a skeg, which is great. A skeg is what's in front of the rudder and propeller, so if you hit something, it won't damage the rudder. Some boats have the rudder just hanging there, and if you hit the coral reef, it'll bend and you won't have a rudder. So a skeg is very important if you're going to have a fin keel boat, okay? Very important. I would go for a full keel. If I was to do it all over again, A, I would have a ketch rigged boat, and B, I would have a full keel and a short draft. This is a 6-foot draft, and I ran aground hundreds of times between here and Nassau and back, okay? Literally hundreds of times, sometimes once a day, okay? With a full keel, it's different, okay? It doesn't really matter because the boat just kind of rubs along the bottom. You're not putting stress on that keel, and it tends to loosen it a bit. And you got to tighten those bolts, or, you know, I wouldn't do that again. If I was going to go around the world, it would have to be a full keel boat, okay? Like a Down East 38. Down East 38 is the boat that you want to get. So, and I've sailed on one, believe me. And yeah, definitely get something like that. That's just my opinion. Make a comment down below. Tell me what you think. I'm not completely dissing full keel boats or fin keel boats. I'm not. They're good. It's just I think you'll get a lot more out of a full keel boat if you're going to do a lot more sailing. Plus, because you have that big full keel, it's almost like a massive rudder. When you put the sails up, it tends to just sail on its own. You know, with the fin keel, it puts what's called weather helm on your autopilot. So you got to have an autopilot as a single-hander. You got to have a good radar system, a good navionics, okay, on a tablet or something as backup, and then you got to have a good chart plotter, a good new set of sails. An engine, you buy an engine, you get a sailboat with it. Make sure that engine is perfect. The engine gets you out of pickles. All right, you're stuck out at sea, wind on the nose, you just want to get into port, you're turning that engine on, and you're basically putting that at 80% throttle and getting in. And you're going to be so thankful that you push that button and that engine starts. Okay, if you're buying an old sailboat where the engine's questionable, don't do it. Buy a boat with a good engine that looks new and has been taken care of. You have all the tools for it. You have all the manuals for it. You've done oil changes on it. You know about the engine. Okay, you could do a head gasket change. I did 2 head gasket changes on this engine over the years. I have all of the tools for this engine. Okay. Now, if you got a lot of money, you can bring your boat into a Yanmar mechanic and have them work on it. It's going to cost you a fortune. Okay. When you could go down there and do it yourself, you got to know about your vessel. Okay. When you first buy an old boat and you don't know where the wires are going, I'll tell you, within the first year, you will know where every single one of those wires is going to, because it's an old boat and things will break, and that's a fact. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I'll be doing a few more of these videos coming up, talking about my experience. I hope that helped you out and give you an idea of what you're up against. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. You can join my Patreon. Okay, I'd appreciate it. Even though I'm back, you know, it's allowing me to do what I really want to do, which is sail around the world. And up and coming here, one day we're gonna. First of all, you know, this boat, she's gonna be up for sale soon. If anyone wants to buy her, love you, Evie. Sorry, but I'm getting a bigger boat. I need a much bigger boat. So a more capable yacht. And the next time we leave, we're never coming back. We're leaving. We're going around the world. And then we're coming back. All right, that's the plan. You know, I spend all my time, I know the island of Madagascar like the back of my hand already. I study it all the time. It's all I think about. You know, in my spare time, I look at charts and I study wind patterns. What's it like in Madagascar today? You know, I know what the weather's like there today. I know the temperatures there today. I know all about that island, you know, because I've been studying it, you know, and I really want to see these places. It's my dream to be able to sail across the Indian Ocean, to be in the Philippines, to go to Australia, New Zealand, you know, I really want to do that. Hawaii, to get into the Pacific, you know, and we're going to do that on this channel coming up here, I hope and pray, very soon. I just need to be able to get into the right boat, and that's what the theme of this channel is gonna be about coming up here. Is my attempt at freedom. You know, I'm gonna get a Starlink and you guys will see the whole thing. So subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. If you want to watch my journey, there's like 300 videos going all the way from Toronto down to the Bahamas and all the way back. You can watch those videos. That'll definitely give you some perspective if you plan on doing something similar. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. And that's it for this video. Stick around for the next video. I've been yacht racing every Wednesday night. There's a big yacht race, and we came in 4th last week, and it was so much fun. I'm going to show you guys a little bit about that in next week's video. So that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Captain Michael signing out. We'll see you in the next one.